All right, well, delighted to continue the build-up in Kilkenny to this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship final. I'm on the old Ballyraggett Road. That's where I am now. Martin Fogarty has joined me. Martin, how are you keeping?
Very good, Shane. You're welcome to the southeast.
Yeah,
home of hurling.
Glad to be here. For people to be familiar with you as you were a selector under Brian Cody for many years. 05 to 13, I think, were the designated years, and then National Hurling Development Manager. So you've been in the public eye for quite some time. But you're also the father of Conor. And it's a big weekend for Conor. I guess I saw the best of luck Conor sign on the way into the house here, and it must be an exciting time as a father to be preparing for an All-Ireland final when your son's involved.
Sure, it certainly is. It's I suppose it's something I would have dreamed about as a youngster myself to try and do it, but unfortunately I wasn't good enough. So to have the son, and the older son was Damien, he was there years ago as well. So to have them playing minor and 21 and then senior, I suppose I live my dreams through them.
Are you able to watch? I'm sure you do watch and you go to all the matches, but is it a torturous or nerve-wracking experience when you have a kid in the pitch?
Well, it's not easy. Ideally, I'd be all on my own, but that's not possible in Croke Park. But sure, look, what can you do? Only go up with the flow and try and pretend it's an ordinary match down in the local club grounds here.
Yeah, Erin's Own is the club down there in Castlecomer. Is that's your local club? The lads have been involved with that club for years as well.
That's correct. Yeah, Erin's Own, Castlecomer.
So I guess you're somewhat used to it, watching them playing for the club. But then when you see the black and amber on them, like it looks different and it feels different, I'd imagine.
Well, sure, the pressure is 1,000 times higher. You're sitting in the stand there and you're watching. It's easier on the line. You're in the stand. You're surrounded by supporters, and they don't really realise maybe who they're giving out about sometimes. I often have to look back sometimes if people are making a few comments about players that they shouldn't. So a good friend of mine years ago, he had a son playing for Kilkenny against Wexford one time, and he told his son that he went off down among the Wexford crowd.
Right.
And the son asked him, "Why did you do that, Daddy?" And he says, "Sure, there's nobody cutting the back off you down there."
They didn't know the names down there. Might have been an easier way to do it.
You never give out about the opposition. You always give out about your own.
Exactly, 100%. And that's the funny thing about being at these matches. Like that era that you would have been a selector under Brian, 05 to 13, like remarkably successful, 6 All-Irelands and all the other titles that came with it. It must have been an absolute privilege to have been involved with such a dominant team really across that era.
Yeah, well, it was. I suppose Michael Dempsey and myself, we came from under 21. We were fortunate to win 2 21s, and we possibly had the best team of all the following year, which we were heading for 3 in a row. But Brian asked us in then, and 05, that wasn't a great year. We were playing Galway in the semi-final, as far as I recall, and we were looking for a shovel there about halfway into the second half. I think we were down 10 or 12 or 14 points, so it wasn't too nice, but the lads dug in and they hauled it back to a goal. So that was tremendous. Even though we lost it, you could see the character in the team that day, 05, which I suppose that's what happened after that. Then that character came through and got to turn over Cork in 06, and that was the beginning of some very good days.
It must be incredible even to see someone like TJ Reid still involved, and not just still involved, but still involved, playing to the level that he's playing at. Like he's just a machine, isn't he?
Yeah, well, it's great from a couple of points. To me, the great thing about it is, age is a number, and over the years, I've seen, I suppose, players cast aside sometimes by the media when they shouldn't be cast aside. Yeah. I mean, I'll go back. You weren't even born. Frank Cummins was a tremendous Kilkenny midfielder years ago, and even Eddie Kerr in his day. And the media decide that these guys are finished, and suddenly they're gone. So TJ has shown that age, it's nothing to do with age really. You're either fit enough and strong enough or not. And even looking at the referee now for Sunday, I think he's 50 and this is his last game. Mm-hmm. But age shouldn't come into it. I mean, you're either, you could be burnt out as a referee, you could be burnt out at 40, and some lads, they could be flying at 55. So anyway, that's somebody else's problem.
Well, no, that's a fair point, and sure, once they pass the fitness test, you'd imagine the age shouldn't come into it. I think that's been a bone of contention for a number of different referees across the country.
Yeah, the same with the players. Just because you hit a certain age means nothing. I mean, if if you do slow down a little bit, which it's, how much do you slow down in from one year to another? But what you have in experience and what you have in the head, you're reading of the game, all of those things are not factored in. But I've seen it even at club level. A player, an older player gets beaten to a ball and suddenly the word goes out. The legs are gone. And maybe, I know some county guys, one time I heard this about a couple of players, the legs were gone and I had to tell your man, they were all-stars 12 months ago. So, but that's what happens. But you have to, I suppose, you're involved with the team, you have to put all that aside and look at what's out in front of you and see what you see.
I'm sure it was a period of mourning in some ways in Kilkenny when Brian Cody announced he was stepping aside from the job, that he had so much success over so many years. And then Derek Ling, I guess, was the passing of the guard really off to him. And I guess some people were saying, geez, it's going to take him a bit of time to get this team going again and to keep things where they were. Because obviously got to a final last year in Cody's last year. But, Jesus, Derek has fairly picked up the mantle and ran with it, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, sure, it wasn't any mourning. I mean, Brian had a tremendous, I suppose, run at it, and I'd say he, more than anybody, was looking to step out at some stage, and there's never a right time to go. Do you go when you lose or do you go when you win? And, and again, the media were talking about a poison chalice and all that kind of nonsense, but it was a very, very straightforward handover, and I'm sure Brian will be the first person to tell you that people on the sideline are almost irrelevant. It's the players drive it. And you have a bunch of players that are driven, which we will always have in Kilkenny. Whether they win or they don't win is beside the point. And, for Derek to step in, all he was really doing was continuing what he had been doing himself as a player and what the squad, I suppose, were doing as a panel right throughout Brian's tenure. So, to me, it was pretty straightforward. And I'm quite sure I wasn't privileged to know what was going on inside in training, but I'm fairly sure things just carried on. And sure, why wouldn't they?
I presume Conor comes home from training and there's very little said, because I guess inter-county camps these days are they're almost like military camps. You don't want words getting in, you don't want words getting out, and it's one of those things, I suppose, when you get home you don't really want to talk about the hurling, you want to focus on something else as well.
The hurling talk would be pretty small, but I mean, I wouldn't need to ask him. I know what's going on inside. Sure, what do you do in training? You do a bit of fitness work early in the year, and then when you get into the hurling part of it, you'll do a certain amount of skill work and you'll play a game, and you're looking for the players then in the game in training to drive on each other and put, I suppose, to try and replicate match situations, and that's it. There's no big magic to it. So the conversation sometimes would be about general things. In particular injuries. He's after picking up a lot of injuries in the last few years, so I'd be asking him that, all right, how were the ribs one year, how was the finger, how was the arm, how was the shin? So other than that, we wouldn't overdo it.
He's been like the walking billboard for the A&E some years, but he's been unbelievable this year, Conor, and even the block against Clare in that semi-final. There's just little moments, I guess, that in a semi-final you look back on, even the save at the end from Owen Murphy, like you're just, it's a game of inches, and those little moments from Conor and from Owen are just so important.
Game of inches, game of millimetres. I often refer to the length of the hurl, and a lot of players know with short hurls, and the J.J. Delaney famous hook years ago with a 36-inch hurl on Seamus Cannon. If he had a 35-inch, everybody except Owen Murphy would tell you the cup would have gone to Tipperary. Murphy reckons he would have caught the ball.
Confidence.
But sure, look at, I suppose all of these little things, a block or a hook or a save, it depends on where they are. When they're on the goal line, they stand out, but throughout the field you have those little blocks, those hooks, you have those chases, and they're equally important out there. Even if you talk about the goalie, if the goalie drops a ball, it's a goal. If a guy out midfield or in the backs drops it, it's no big deal. So all of these little skills are hugely important, and our fellas, sure, all inter-county players now, and they're just tremendous at all that kind of stuff, and that's what separates the winners from the losers. Small things, a hop of a ball hits a post, comes in, comes out, and that's probably what will decide the game next Sunday.
You finished up, was it last year, Martin, as the National Hurling Development Manager. I think I read somewhere that you had maybe over 300,000 miles put on the car and over 1,000 training sessions. It could be even more than that, to be fair, but you must look back on that particular role with massive pride as well.
It was a strange role in that it was a privilege really to be in it, and it opened my eyes really to, I suppose, what I call the wilderness of hurling and the great people that are working in the counties where hurling is, oh God, it's a religion, and it's so difficult to run it without boring you too much. But if you draw a line from Dublin to Galway and go north of it, and excluding Antrim and barely excluding Down, you've got 13 counties that have 9 or less than 9 adult hurling clubs. And that goes all the way down to Fermanagh with 1, Lisbon. Now they might have a second one from year to year. And you know, when you get to meet those people and see how difficult it is to play the game of hurling, it's an unbelievable privilege, because even here in Kilkenny, it's quite easy to play football, because you have over 30 clubs would field a football team at every age grade. So we'd have 3 grades of football at every age grade. No problem. And from the top of Kilkenny to the bottom of Kilkenny, 3/4 of an hour to take you there. So there's no difficulty. Whereas guys in Westport, in Mayo, or in Eastkey and Sligo, maybe to get one hurling match, they probably have to travel 20 or 30 miles. But to get 2, they might have to travel 60.
We have there's a map here, and you were showing me it before, and people might be able to see this on the screen, but you'll see black dots are essentially, maybe explain what's going on. So black dots are adult clubs and red dots are juvenile clubs, and this is basically that line from Dublin to Galway north. It just shows the sparseness of it.
Well, I put that map together to run what we call the Tánaóg and the Cuchulainn leagues. The Tánaógs were the juvenile leagues and the Cuchulainn the adult version. And actually just last Sunday there we had the Division 2 and Division 3 finals of the Cuchulainn. So when you put the dots out on the map, obviously you see where the clubs are, and then you try and group them, and that's not easy. Unfortunately, they're so scattered, you can't grade them. So you got to get an area there and maybe take the 10 nearest clubs and put them into a group, and many of those will have to travel an hour to get to a halfway venue. So that was the purpose of that. Now, obviously the aim down the line would be to turn the red dots into black dots. So that if you looked at Fermanagh there with just 1 adult club, 1 black dot, but you had 7 red dots. Now if we could bring, and I say we, I mean the GA as a whole, could bring those 7 red dots, juvenile units, up to adult units, then you'd have 8 adult clubs in Fermanagh. That would be something else. That would be phenomenal. And you know, we look at inter-county, I suppose, you know, you have the Joe McDonagh Grand, but then you have the Ring Record and Mar. And those are the clubs that are making, or they're building up those teams. But you know, if you look at Longford there, and you're looking at 3 clubs, and they're unbelievable. The standard that county team has based on just 3 clubs is unbelievable. Now, if you could build that from 3 to 6, from 6 to 12, it would be something else. I mean, Sligo, you would say last year there, you know, they're working off of maybe 5 clubs. And they had Eastkey there in the Junior All-Ireland last year. And Mayo had Tory and Mayo working there. So what are we looking at? We're looking at 4 or 5 clubs. So the standard of hurling that those guys have based on the small numbers is absolutely off the Richter scale.
Because even if you're looking at my own county there, I'm just looking at the map. I think it's 6 adult clubs, and like Monaghan win their first ever Lory Mar this year. So like when you see what some of these counties are I guess working off to achieve what they're achieving is quite remarkable.
It is, and the standard they have. Now, even if you go up a step or two and look at, well, Carlow will say, for example, a tremendous county, but they're only working off as 5 or 6 clubs as well. But the little advantage they have is their clubs are very close to Wexford, they're very close to Kilkenny, they're very close to Dublin, so they don't have a huge problem getting games. If you look at Offaly, you know, Offaly are probably working off at 10 senior clubs. Laois the same, maybe 10 or 12, and they're trying to compete with Kilkenny. We'd have 44 clubs, 12 seniors, 12 intermediates. So you know, when you compare like with like, those lesser counties are, you know, they're really punching away above their weight.
What do you think is the biggest? It's a pretty big question, but the biggest challenge facing hurling at the moment, because I guess the Donalog comments on TV a couple of months ago or whatever it was were fairly hit the headlines, and I guess he was, you know, comparing it to the Talton Cup and the coverage that is given to hurling. Is that the biggest challenge? Is it just getting eyeballs on games, or how do you see it?
Yeah, well, I'd look at Don Logue's comments. I'd say they were probably misinterpreted. They were, I would say that the Tailteann to me was something just had to happen in football, and not being a football man, I would say they have to go a couple of steps further, and you had Meath and Down in the final there last weekend. To me, Meath and Down are All Ireland contenders. And I think Martin Breheny said in the paper that they probably shouldn't be in it. It should be for the lesser counties. So I would say in football they definitely need another tier. Because in hurling, at county level, it's brilliant. Every county has some hope of making the final. Yeah. And have some hope of getting to Croke Park. And while, that's brilliant. And they can step up along. Like if you take, for example, if Sligo were to win the Lowery Mar, well then they can step up to the record and then the ring, and you have the pathway there. You don't have it in football. Now, to build the counties up, to me is very, very simple. We need more clubs in the counties. Right. It's as simple as that. Now you could ask the question and you say, why are Dublin not winning in All Ireland? They have plenty of clubs. Antrim have probably 24 hurling clubs. Why are they not coming on a little bit higher? That's a different question. But the biggest challenge is to get that 13 counties to not just multiply by 2, multiply by 3, multiply by 4, and then, without a shadow of doubt, they will improve. They have to improve.
It's amazing, like when because the map makes it so stark. Because we obviously can't see the bottom half of the country in that map, but I'd imagine it's completely the opposite. You've clubs everywhere, and you've volunteers everywhere. Yeah. Like, just getting the volunteers involved in some of those counties can be tough, I'd imagine.
You see, yeah, the biggest problem is getting games. Yeah. Like if you're looking after the team, look up there in Donegal, and you're out there with say in Guidor. Like to get one match, you're travelling 20 miles. To get 2 matches, you're travelling 50, and that's the problem. Yeah. And that's so we need more clubs that you don't have to go as far for a match. And if you were to look at Longford, you got 3 clubs. So what's your championship? It's a 3-way round robin. No, that's not challenging, and that's why we brought in the Tánaóg and the Cuchulainn. So you take the Cuchulainn leagues there, the adult version of the Tánaóg, and we had 60 teams in that this year. So if you look at that whole area and you had 60 teams in it, divide them up into 3 grades, which in itself was brilliant because there's such a difference in some of the clubs, some of the teams, that to be able to grade it is a major step forward. So with the adults, to have 60 clubs in that, playing right across the 13 counties, that's the future for hurling in those counties. And hopefully, players will find it a little bit more challenging, because if your hurling championship is only going to be maybe a weekend in the end of September, a 3-way playoff, that's not challenging. Yeah. But if your championship is a 10 or a 12 team championship, then that's worth getting out of bed for, it's worth training for. And to me then, players will buy into that and the whole thing will snowball.
Do you ever get sick of the phrase modern hurling? People talk about the weight of the slitter and the length of the hurl as well, and the what else? I suppose the sweeper and the high scoring games. Do you feel it has changed that much in the last 10, 20, 30 years? Or
the term modern hurling wrecks my head.
Right.
Because hurling is hurling. And the field is the same size. There's still 50 in a side. The only thing that's changed is the lighter ball, which means that ball is travelling faster. And I think it's going to come back around again. The whole sweeper system, for a start, is crazy. I haven't seen any teams win with it. And as I've spoken to some friends of mine that use and say, look at the games that you're winning with the sweeper, you're going to win them anyway. But what people don't realise is when they deploy a sweeper, they're automatically creating one at the other side. So if you take All Ireland champions Ballyhale, and a team says, if we're going to beat these guys, we have to pull a sweeper. And straight away they're leaving Owen Reid, or not Owen, they're leaving Richie Reid loose at the other end. And it's crazy. But other things then, like trying to short passing. Now, Kilkenny were short passing as long as I can remember, back when I was a young fella, and they'll short pass if a long one is not on, or if they're under pressure. But to insist on short passing, that if I have a ball here and you're standing 20 yards away and I am instructed, no matter what, I have to play it to you, well, that's nonsense. And maybe a guy loose below on the other end of the square. So that's why I say this thing about breaking the lines. if I'm standing in corner back and the goalie pucks the ball to me, and my instruction then is to break the line, and I could hit the ball, but I see Kyle Hayes 20 yards away, I have to break the line. I won't be breaking many lines. No. So, you know, that's down to coaching, and in my view, it's down to bad coaching. That coaches are trying to, I suppose, they're trying to play the game from the line, but you can't do that. Hurling is an instinctive game, and you have to learn the skills and apply the skills, and it has to be down to the player then, if you're lucky enough to have the ball, to say, right, what's the best thing I can do with the ball now for the team. So, but it's coming back around, and you might have noticed this year, you know, if you look at Limerick, you know, they're outstanding All-Ireland champions, but the amount of scores they get with players loose is phenomenal. Yeah. But that's closing down. You know, I mean, to me, from day one, when you have the ball, everybody is a forward. Everybody is looking to get the ball over the bar or under the bar. And when you don't have it, everyone is a defender. But teams have gone away from that in recent years, and leaving good players loose is crazy as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, if you watch Clare in the last couple of games with Limerick, there weren't too many guys left loose. Even there, I think Tip had Limerick there in a game recently, or was it Clare, and there wasn't too many left loose. So this high level of coaching, I think, is starting to swing around now and figure out that if a good player has the ball and you don't tackle him or you stand off him, he's going to score. So it'll come back.
It's always circular, isn't it? It always reverts back to type. You mentioned the Limerick team there. Before I get your prediction for Sunday, Martin, I must ask you about Limerick, because it feels like the gap certainly between Limerick and the pack has closed this year and the last year or two maybe, compared to say 2018-19. What has been the difference in Limerick and those counties chasing them? Is it just skill level that was maybe a little bit higher than other counties, or how were they able to be on the cusp of a 4 in a row?
But you're like any team, whether it's club or county, to be good and to win, you have to get a bunch. And Limerick got a bunch. Like Limerick have had great players over the years, and sometimes they were unlucky, and small things would have kept them out of a final. And sure our lads played them there a few years back, and the real wet day was at a semi-final or a quarter-final, and there was only a puck of a ball between them. You know, there was no difference whatsoever between the two teams. And I think Kilkenny went on to win the All-Ireland. I forget what year it was. But to win, you need a bunch, and your bunch has to be better than the next bunch. It's as simple as that. Sometimes a team can be unlucky in that they have a good bunch, but the neighbours maybe just have a slightly better one. And Limerick have that for the last couple of years. They have the fine hurlers, are very, very skillful, and they have a very good mixture of speed and size and power. And at the end of the day, when you have that, it's going to take beating. And I suppose the other counties didn't have that bunch. But what's going to happen this year, who knows? I mean, last year there was very little in it. Yeah. You know, even this year, sure, Clare, and last year Clare have pushed them very, very close. I mean, part of me thought Clare might win an All-Ireland this year. No, they won't. So, what's going to happen?
Well, that's the final question for you, Martin. I suppose how do you? It's a head and heart thing, I guess, when you have family involved and when it's your own county involved, and you have so much history in the black and amber. But how do you see the game going on Sunday?
Sure, look, we can all make predictions and we all hope, but sure, at the end of the day, we don't have a clue, because the ball will be thrown in, and people will say you won't know till the ball is thrown in. You won't actually know it. You mightn't even know it in the last 10 minutes, because again, I look back there to 2005, and our lads were down 10, 12 points against Galway, and you could say it was time to go home, but they drew it back to a goal. So you really don't know. All I would say, and I'd harp back maybe to, you mentioned it there earlier, harp back to 2006 when Kilkenny were coming off of, you could say a hiding by Galway, even though it ended up as a goal. And then facing Cork, were running for, I think, 3 in a row at that stage. And a little bit like Limerick at the moment, we're playing a very, very possession game. A lot of people wrote off Kilkenny at that time. But I remember going up to that match, having watched our lads training for the previous 3 weeks, and their level of commitment was unreal. The competition for places was unreal. And I know that in my head and Brian and Michael's head, going up that day, collectively we said it'll take a good team to beat us. You know, you can never say we're going to win this game, but you know you have material. You know you have 50 and guys going to start and maybe 5 coming on, and they're absolutely going to empty the tank, and they have a fair bit of skill level. And if you deliver that, they're going to be hard to beat. Now, how a player actually plays on a given day, you don't know till you go out. I call it form. You know, you need 13 guys in top form to win these games. So I see this year as something the same. I mean, we have a very, very good chance, and obviously Limerick have a very, very good chance. And I think if Limerick are going to beat us, they're going to have to be very, very good.
Absolutely. Well, that's the best way to call it, because as you say, we don't have a clue, and all the pundits that confidently call this Sunday's game, I think, are maybe lying to themselves. You know, it's a tough one.
A hop of a ball. I mean, football is fairly big, and a hop of a ball mightn't decide too much. But in hurling, you talk about a game of inches. It's a game of millimetres. Ball hits off your hand, it hops into it, it goes here, a touch of a hurl. I mean, you go back through the semi-final. I mean, how many things in that game happened on both sides that had they not happened, the result would have been different. I mean, if you even take, the last goal that Kilkenny got, if the Clare keeper hadn't puck it out short, the goal wouldn't have come.
Yeah.
So would have been a different result. In the first half, maybe my mind, I think our guys were maybe going in on goal and were possibly fouled twice. Had they not been fouled, we could have got 2 goals, possibly. Yeah. So, you know, the game hinges on the smallest. A line ball can decide the game. Yeah. A lucky break, but you know what you have to bring. You have to bring everything that's in the bag. You know, your players have to bring everything, and then you hope that you won't suffer an unfortunate score. And scores come, unfortunately. I mean, I watched Dublin and Carlow across the road here early in the year, and Dublin won it. But the first goal that Carlow got, I won't say it was a lucky goal, but it kind of came against the run of play, and it kind of shouldn't have come. And Carlow couldn't bridge the gap after. They had 3 points, 4 points, they couldn't bridge it. If that goal hadn't come, Carlow actually could have won the game. So that's sport for you. That's why we go to these games, and we don't just decide in advance who the winners are. Yeah,
that's why we love sport, and that's why we love hurling, I think, isn't it? That interest. Well, listen, Martin, it's been a pleasure, and enjoy the game on Sunday as best you can. Best of luck to Conor and the Kenny lads.
Appreciate that. Enjoying it. It's I suppose it's only when it's over you enjoy it if you win, and if you don't, you don't. Yeah,
you'll be in Langton Sunday night if they win, no doubt.
We'll be in there either way.
Either way.